Good evening, and welcome to this called meeting of the Northside Board of Trustees. Before calling this meeting to order, the board would like to take just a moment to briefly review some of the rules for conducting our meeting. The order of business for this meeting is set out in the agenda. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct board business, and for that reason, it is held in public. It is not a public forum. However, we do provide the opportunity for audience participation. If there's anyone here who would like to address the board during an agenda item, we ask that you complete a sign-up sheet located at the back of the room. Is there anyone here who has wanted to sign up for an agenda item that has not already done so? I know we have a lot of recognitions here. Y'all don't have to sign up because you're on the agenda. Okay. So before calling this meeting to order, we want to welcome Dr. Kraft to the dais, and this is your first meeting, one of many, but momentous. Momentous. Okay. This meeting will officially be called to order. Please stand and bow your heads as Trustee Dr. Harrell leads us in the invocation and pledges of allegiance.
Almighty and merciful God, we ask your guidance and blessings upon this board, students, parents, patrons, teachers, administrators, and our new superintendent as we are assembled here this evening in the common pursuit of this great nation's wealth, our children. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Harrell. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the called meeting, so we do not have superintendent or board members report. We have recognitions. So we have a lot of TMEA all-star musicians. So if the board and the superintendent just come down in front of the dais and we'll honor these young people before us.
Time update here?
Good evening, Dr. Kraft, President Freeman, and Board of Trustees. It is always such an honor to recognize outstanding students, and we have some very gifted musicians in the room with us tonight. The Texas Music Educators Association, or TMEA, is the largest music educators organization in North America. Annually, this association conducts student auditions in concert, jazz band, choir, and orchestra. Approximately 25,000 students audition and only 870 are selected. Selection to the Texas All-State indicates music achievement in the top 1% of musicians in the state. It is the highest individual student award that can be achieved in public music education. Their audition work culminates with a command performance during the TMEA conference that's held here in San Antonio. These students rehearse extremely difficult literature for only 2 days under the direction of a world-renowned conductor, and I and several others got to see them perform. There are 18 Northside student musicians who were selected to this honor in 2023, representing 8 of our district high schools. Please help me congratulate these students and their instructors as they come up for board recognition. And they'll come up one at a time, then they'll stop and pose so their parents can get a picture. Caleb Alexander, band, Brandeis High School.
Dr. Kraft, if you'll have him stand for
Riley Amaya, Jazz Band, Brandeis High School. Salmia Duavetti, Choir, Brandeis High School. Gabriel Gonzalez, Jazz Band, Brandeis High School. Gavin Patrick, Band, Brandeis High School. Is that it? Oh.
The instructor's going to come up too. Jesse's.
Oh, instructors. Oh.
Yeah, come on.
Oh, yes, yes, let's do that. We'll do you next, Austin. No, no. Jesse Cuellar, Brandeis High School. Okay, and you'll go next. I think, do we have an Austin or
No,
Shane?
Shane is next.
Okay, so Shane Lemansky. Oh, yes. You look so young. Student, I thought. Okay, Mr. Lemansky, Band Director, Brandeis High School. Okay, now. Okay. David Suarez, Band Director, Brandeis High School.
Gotcha.
Oh, goodness. Thank you, Bonnie Wolf, Choir Director, Brandeis High School. Alston Salmon Jazz Band, Brennan High School.
You're a lot taller than I am. Thank you.
And our band director.
Thank you, Riley Mazzietta, Band, Clark High School. Thank you, sir. Justin Murphy, Band Director, Clark High School. Ethan Chapa Einkoff, Choir, Health Careers High School.
Thank you all. Got it. Thank you.
Martha Bagwell, Choir Director, Health Careers High School.
She's pretty awesome, yeah.
You get a picture, you get a picture.
Got it. Thank you.
Brandon Garza, Orchestra, Marshall High School. Richard Isaac Pena, Band, Marshall High School. Absolutely, yes, have him come back up. These two gentlemen are twins, so we'll get him, then have both together. So this is Zachary Levi Pena, Band, Marshall High School.
Thank you very much.
Chrysia Olson, Choir, O'Connor High School. I'm teasing. Sarah Stevens, Choir Director, O'Connor High School. Thank you so much. Seth Sandoval, Jazz Band, Taft High School. Jaylee Johnson, choir, Warren High School. Riley Bagary, choir, Warren High School. This is Colin Marville and Brenna Santos, Director and Assistant Director for Warren High School. Choir. Wouldn't be complete.
Well, we missed Thomas.
I'm actually in replacement of Thomas.
Oh, well, then come get it anyway.
I can walk for Thomas. Thomas Covert,
Thomas Covert from
Brendan High School.
Brennan High School. Okay, thank you.
Appreciate everything.
Please let him know. Thanks for being here for him.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. You want to take pictures?
Yeah, why
Oh, yes. Greg Mills, Taft High School.
And representing.
Would you like to come, please? Jazz band director, also all-state musician. Thank you. This is Robert Soto for Greg Mills. Okay, well, this wouldn't be complete if we didn't recognize our wonderful Mr. James Hare, coordinator of fine arts, who works with Mr. James Michalka and the entire amazing fine arts team. Yes, any parents, family members, if you'll stand. This concludes our recognitions. Thank you.
It's always a real joy to welcome or to recognize our students and all their accomplishments, and you truly are. You've done very well, so we wish you congratulations again. Appreciate the families being here as well. And we've got a few more items on the board agenda, so this is your opportunity to leave if you'd like. You're certainly welcome to stay. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Wait.
So next item on the agenda is under budget review. Dr. Barajas, welcome. Would you like to lead us off in this discussion?
I will, unless Dr. Kraft has anything, any preamble.
Again, we're hard at work in putting together the fiscal year '24 budget.
Oh, you're not.
Okay. There's always a first time for everything. I always remind students that.
There's a lot of buttons.
Now, we've been working hard already on the fiscal year '24 budget, as you're well aware. So, Madam President, this evening, members of the board, this evening's really a high-level overview, obviously current state of where we are for the 22-23 budget, and then also a general timeline for the 23-24 budget, and just some analysis of some things that we're looking at, including a high-level view of where we currently stand in relationship to surrounding districts with teacher compensation. And so I'll turn it over to Dr. Braz at this point, and Tiffany to work through, like I say, just this general update. We anticipate that going forward, this will be probably a recurring agenda item in preparation for a August 31 completion date. So, Dr. Braz.
Okay, so for the board, this is a familiar presentation. We've been doing these probably over the last year. Same kind of format. We always start with where we are in the current budget, just to give the board a little update on how this budget and how we are doing kind of leads into the next year. The difference between this year and last year is that the legislature wasn't in session last year, so we kind of knew the law of the land going into this particular school year, 23-24, 22-23. Not so much for next year. We'll have a couple of slides later that Ms. Rosti will cover, but what's kind of bubbling in Austin right now. So where are we with the 22-23 budget? Again, we built the budget based on 93,000 ADA. We've talked about that numerous times since last July, August. As of snapshot date, we're at 102,000 in enrollment. Tax collections, which represents about 2/3 of our general fund revenue, is coming in as expected, so there's no issue there. The news is that while we built a budget around 93,000 ADA, it has consistently tracked above 94,000 since the first 6-week period. As of the end of the 4-6 weeks, you can see it's 94,200. So while a year ago, well, almost a year ago, we thought 93,000 was a bit boy, that was tough, and here we are hitting 94. So that's good news for us. We are working on developing that new revenue estimate, along with a few other revenue items that we want to go in and fine-tune to incorporate into Budget Amendment number 2, which right now we plan to bring to the board in May to kind of reset where we are this year in relation to where the board adopted the deficit budget back in August of $60+ million. Just a graph, current tax collections, it's been consistent at least for the last 10 years when we've been tracking this. Northside taxpayers pay their taxes, and we collect them, so there's no issue here. But we have to throw that chart in to show that taxes are coming in as we expected. If we look at the expenditure side, so you turn over that budget coin, that's the revenue side, you look at where our expenditures are trending. Well, we are right where we thought we would be. You know, halfway through the year, roughly, we're about halfway. So there's nothing that we see that tells us that we are going to come in over expenditures, or anything that tells us that we're going to come in below expenditures. So I think over the last couple of years, we've been sharpening our skills regarding what we need to budget for expenditures, and I think that right now we are probably going to hit close to 100% of what we budgeted. Of course, the biggest bars are salaries and benefits. Right now, we're close to 90% of salaries and benefits represents the general fund. Those other little tabs of butter represent everything else. Which, interestingly, we spend a lot of time talking about those little tabs of butter more so than we do on the other side, but not so much anymore because you kind of look at where are we spending our money. It's in salaries and benefits, so we track that weekly, if not monthly. So how do we use all that information to develop the budget for next year? Well, just like the last couple of years, you've seen, we're going to come in and we're going to be conservative, even though we've been trending above 94,000 ADA. We'll have to talk with the superintendent to see whether or not we want to build a budget around 94,000 and change, or do we go a little bit below 94,000 just to be conservative as far as ADA. Every year is going to stand on its own. With COVID in our rearview mirror and a bunch of other things happening, it could be that next year, as for instance, all of a sudden after the first 6 weeks, we're trending below 94,000, despite the fact that the previous year we were above 94,000. So it's really hard to say, but those are the conversations that we're having about what number are we going to use for next year. Of course, the other thing is what's going to happen to the basic allotment, and Ms. Frosty will cover some of that information. Can't tell you any more right now other than we're gathering all the data. We have a budget that we have this year. It's called the base budget. And what we know is that we're going to add some stuff on top of that. Some stuff is going to come out. That's the genesis of the 23-24 budget, is we have a base to build on or a base to take away from, depending on what the situation may be. But that is what we're looking at putting together to share with the superintendent, so we can kind of get a semblance of what the budget's going to look like next year. With the revenue side, a complete unknown as of today, because there's not a particular bill that everybody is honing in on that's saying, oh, the basic allotment's going to be increased by $50, 75, or 100, or whatever it happens to be. Guaranteed yields on the golden pennies and all those other kinds of things. We're kind of sitting on our hands, waiting to see what the revenue picture is going to look like. The legislative update. I'll let Ms. Rosti cover this because there's so much is happening. This is her bailiwick for her to cover these items.
Thank you. Do you mind clicking, because there's only 2 slides? But
Of course.
okay. I know there's more, a whole lot that we still need to cover, so I'll try to go quickly. There are, I think most of you know, there's over 9,000 bills that have been filed. So we're not going to recap all of them that would touch public ed funding. I tried to kind of categorize it the way I've been thinking of some big ticket items: school safety funding, because that's been a priority of the governor in both chambers, teacher pay, and the basic allotment. So these bills that I put on here are not the only ones that touch these items. I focused on these for tonight because these are the ones that are moving pretty quickly. And actually, just while y'all were doing recognitions, the House budget bill, which just passed last Thursday, got added to an agenda item in the Senate for tomorrow. So that will be up in the Senate Finance Committee tomorrow morning. So I want to touch on school safety really quickly because that, like I said, is a priority. We have 2 bills that have been moving, House Bill 13 and House Bill 3. And you can see what they do to the school safety allotment. Just as a reminder, currently we receive $9.72 per student in ADA, not per student enrolled. And so we get, I think, just under 900,000-ish. And last time I checked, our school safety expenses were upwards of $9 million annually. So we're receiving far less than what we're spending. These 2 bills, HB 13 increases that $9.72 to $100 per student. And just a rough calculation from what I can see, that puts us close to breaking even on current school safety expenses. But keep in mind, there's a lot of bills floating around that would add safety expenses, and they refer back to being funded through this allotment. So while the allotment's going up and maybe meeting us where we're at now, there are also new requirements that will almost certainly be added. So TBD if we come out still kind of in the red. The other one, House Bill 3, is only $10 per student. Looks kind of appealing at first glance with the $15 per campus. It depends probably on the school district what the impact would be to you depending on how many campuses you have. I don't think this is working super well. Okay. It's not working. Well,
There you go.
it's on and off. Okay. So those are 2 big ones that are moving. There's a whole lot more in both of those 2 bills that we can talk about at another time maybe, because it does a lot more than just those 2 items.
Excuse me, Cal.
Yes.
Did you have a question concerning?
I've got one for Dr. Barajas, but
When we
we'll
get
come
through
back.
this. Okay,
Let's
thank
come
you.
back.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your
No,
light.
that's all right. Let's
All
come back
questions
to
are best
that.
answered by him. Senate Bill 9 has passed the Senate already and is moving over to the House now. That one is interesting. That one's being dubbed the Teacher Bill of Rights. It does a number of different things. I don't want to speak for all teachers, but there's some significant concerns in there, but the main thing that I wanted to point out for the sake of tonight's conversation is the one-time salary increase that's listed in the bill for classroom teachers only. For us, because we have over 20,000 students, what's in the bill now would give us 2,000 per classroom teacher one time. Our neighboring school districts, East Central, Southwest, I can't think of all of them off the top of my head that are under 20,000, Alamo Heights, they would receive 6,000. So there's a disparity there, especially for us being in Bexar County. I do find the pre-K eligibility for classroom teachers one to be really interesting and probably appealing to teachers, but that bill is, it's a big bill, so there's a lot more to cover, but I really wanted to point out to y'all that salary piece. House Bill 100,
Before you go on.
Sure.
Ms. Chumley?
yes.
Kelly, so explain that, Renee can help on that.
Mhm.
So if they're saying they're gonna do a one-time $2,000
Mhm.
For teachers,
Mhm.
then is that gonna be looked upon as just a,
Just a bonus or a
like
stipend.
just like just a bonus or stipend?
Mhm.
Or is that going to be something that the district would then be expected to have as recurring debt on salary for the next year, even though the state won't give us the money for it?
Depends if it's through the formulas, then it would be embedded for that to be paid by the state every year. Or if it's just $2,000 one time, depending on what the bill is, it would be just like a one-time retention payment.
Right,
And
a stipend.
Yeah.
exactly. And then whether or not we would have the wherewithal to continue it depends what the language is in the bill. It could say that you're on the hook for it down the road. I haven't seen the legislature do that to us when they have passed a raise of this kind. It usually comes through the formulas and it's paid for. But after about 5, 6, 7 years, they take it away. So then you're on your own. So
Mhm.
Thank you.
Sure. House Bill 100 is what we've been tracking for the current conversations on an increase to the basic allotment. So, as it's written, this one would increase the BA in the first year of the biennium to 6,250, and we're at 6,160 currently. And the year after that, it would go to 6,300. So, just to keep in mind, we're currently at 6,160. Solely to meet inflation from 2019, we would need to go up by about $1,000. And this bill puts us up by $140. That's the best estimate of the most optimistic BA increase we have right now. It also includes an inflationary index, and then it would remove the required, if you remember back from House Bill 3, the requirement that any increase to the BA triggers an automatic increase in pay for certain employee categories, and I think it's 30%, Renee, is that right, of an increase to the BA has to go to salary increases for those groups. This bill moves that to a 50% requirement. So 50% of whatever, if it's 140, 50% of that would have to go to pay raises for those categories of employees. And then a few additional items on there. One big thing in House Bill 100 is that not the BA, but most of the allotments would move to enrollment versus attendance based. So those are big ones that we're watching that are moving right now. There's a lot that are filed but may not even be heard in a committee. They might be heard in one chamber but not have enough time to make it through to the other. So these seem to be the ones that we really need to pay attention to right now. Okay, I know this looks ugly. We don't have to go over all of this, but last Thursday was a big night in the House because of the a general appropriations bill being heard. That has passed like I said at the beginning, that's passed the House, and it just got added to the Senate agenda for tomorrow morning. The Senate and the House, I'm sure you've heard in the news recently, have differing opinions on how to offer property tax cuts. So right now I'm focusing on House Bill 1 since that's the one that's kind of moved quicker. They have $17.5 billion for property tax cuts. You can kind of see the breakdown of how we would get there. The Speaker of the House has an emphasis on trying to lower the appraisal cap from 10% to 5%. In the Senate, the plan is more focused on increasing the homestead exemption. So both of those plans, because of offering property tax cuts, would require the state to pitch in more towards education funding, to take more of the share and relieve some of the local share. But it's important to note, because I think that sometimes for the general public, when they see changes to the state infusing money for public ed, I feel or I sense that some community members think that that equals increased dollars for our budget. And I think I was just talking to Trustee Lopez earlier, a dollar is still a dollar, whether, the state gives me 75 cents or the local property taxes give me that. So we really, aside from going out for, a tax rate election or increasing enrollment and attendance, we need to see an increase, a significant increase to the basic allotment to actually see new dollars. So there is in both chambers, there is $5 billion in, I'm putting in quotes, new money for public ed. And I want to just go back to the basic allotment real quick to offer a basic allotment increase that would only adjust for inflation from 2019, not bring us to a national average for per student funding, just to adjust for inflation. The price tag to the state would be $14 billion. That doesn't count all the other things that we would, be looking at for increased funding for school safety, on here instructional materials and technology. But what we have is $5 billion on the table currently. And that $5 billion is not earmarked, as it reads right now in the budget writer, it's not earmarked solely for the basic allotment, it's earmarked for all of those items. Compensation and benefits for teachers, incentive allotment, basic allotment, school safety, all of those things.
Does that 5 billion include the hold harmless money that regard from the reduced property tax? Or
The hold harmless
Oh,
for
I'm
the
sorry.
compression?
right? No. Yes. So does that 5 billion include any of that?
No.
When you say new money, so that wouldn't. Okay.
Yeah, and I say new money because from this past biennium, the state saved over $8 billion in increased property taxes raised from higher appraisals, and that is not coming back to public ed. That's just being absorbed in state coffers. So it would be nice if that was infused back into public ed in some way. Let's see, on Thursday night on the House floor, there was almost 400 amendments filed. They were not all heard. Many of them were heard and many failed, but a few of them made it through. There was a couple of amendments to significantly increase teacher pay. Those failed. And one significant one that passed that I think we've seen in the news is an amendment that prohibits use of all of this appropriated money for vouchers, basically. But a couple of people have asked me about that today. That doesn't mean that those are dead. It's just kind of a statement, kind of a litmus test for which representatives feel strongly about that particular issue. Ultimately, and there's a footnote at the bottom of the slide, ultimately, all of these things will go to a conference committee with just a handful of legislators from both chamber. All of it can be taken out with a stroke of a pen really quickly. So all of it is subject to change, and hopefully we will see some improvements along the way. But this is kind of the best vibe that I have for today, Tuesday evening, and it'll be different tomorrow after the Senate meets. I think, let me see if I made any other notes here. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I think that's it.
Mr. Lopez?
Kelly, thank you very much for that one. I was curious to know, and maybe you can talk to it or maybe just touch on some of the legislation that occurs or that's going on that has to do with some of our social services. And one in particular was the Texas grandparents raising grandchildren.
Yeah.
I know there's a bill out there. Can you talk to me about that a little bit or kind of give me an update on that or give the board an update on that?
I probably need to go back and read it a little bit more thoroughly, but I did want to I'm glad you reminded me of that. I did want to point out that there's a number of bills that are moving, and that is one of the board-adopted legislative priorities that we would support, legislation that helps grandparents and caregivers raising children. And I know that in Bexar County, we've discussed it in a board meeting before, Bexar County has a higher number of grandparents raising their grandkids than any other region in the state, I believe, if that's still accurate. So it's an issue of particular interest to Northside.
And this is, I'm sorry, Mr.
Oh, go
Lopez.
ahead.
I was going to say, and just to remind, this is a budget discussion on the budget bills that we have. If, as Mr. Lopez just asked, if there was anything anybody else wanted an update on, Friday letter, since you, would be good.
Definitely do that.
Thank you, appreciate it. And the only reason why I bring that up is because I think there was, this committee, or this particular budget, or the bill, was going to go to the Social Services Committee, I believe it was, and don't quote me on that. But I was looking at, and talking to some of the organizations, they were saying, hey, it would really help if we as a board would possibly either send a letter to the committee, and I was just wanting to see if you all would be interested or would be willing to send a letter to the committee and just saying, hey, we support this. There's going to be some real good services coming out of that bill. And so anything that we can do as a district to get behind that, I think would help that population of our students that are being taken care of by grandparents and even the kinship. So just wanted to see if we would be able to do that as well.
Could you send us an update on the bill?
Mhm.
And then, maybe who's on the social services committee?
Mhm.
And so we could look at that, because it doesn't necessarily have to be from the board, it could just go individually from us as well.
Absolutely.
That'd be, you know,
We'll do a little bit further research and we'll follow up in the newsletter. We absolutely can. Ms. Rossi's been doing a pretty phenomenal job of trying to track a bunch of bills, in particular in and around school choice and of course the budget. This is probably one of the more complicated legislative sessions that I've actually been a part of, so we'll definitely follow up in the newsletter.
how about anything on vaping?
They've slowed in the past 2 weeks. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's a few bills and committee hearings that are passing by while I'm watching other ones, but we did have a bill heard that was of interest to Northside and to our superintendent, that would address some of the penalties when a student has a vape pen and it meets certain criteria, and there's not been a history of that.
Thank you. And to the board, our agenda item is budget, so let's keep the questions related to any budget agenda items. And then if you have any questions for Ms. Rusty, then we can take care of those after
I think
maybe
we're
after
still
the
okay
meeting.
though, Karen, since part of the budget review is the legislative updates. I think we're okay.
Related to the
'Cause
budget.
it's part
Related to
because
the budget.
Related to the budget.
We do need to, because there's so many questions that I think some of us have on legislative
I
items.
was just going to say, if I may, for certain topics, even if you don't have a bill number, if there's topics that you want an update on, maybe before we leave, I can get a note of all of those, and then I can compile it too and get it to all of you,
Right.
if that would help.
Great. Mr. Blunt?
But related to the budget thing, I lost track on this one. They may have died. The 15,000 that was being proposed out of Houston, did that finally?
15,000
increase?
for teacher pay raise?
Yeah.
It's
It's
it could be brought back.
Okay. It's okay.
It's the will of the legislature.
Okay, thanks. Okay, no, you answered. Okay, I'm good. Thank you. Can I, I'm sorry, this is a bad example of our superintendent's first meeting, but I've got to leave a little bit early. But I did, if I can I get on one other question on 2 slides down? I was just going to ask on that teacher salary run is a really good, I know you're rebooting, is a really good, I hadn't realized that. I know we've been talking about it. I think you all can see which one I'm talking about, right? Our pay and how it compares to other districts. I think that's really good information to have. I was going to ask, do we have something similar for our other employees that sort of shows it to that degree? I've never asked that before, but I was just curious.
We could, depending on the broad group of employees.
Okay.
If you wanted to take this, like custodians or food service or transportation, yes, we
Okay.
have access to that data to create as many charts as there is data available. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good chart. Okay, thank you. And I apologize again.
Oh, no, sir. So just a clarification, the various classifications of all employees running a very similar analysis, years of experience.
I don't.
average.
Yeah, I don't want to cause too much work, to be honest. Just
Thank
yeah, okay. Just maybe a.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, just a
Renee, I
couple
don't
of key
mind, I don't
no.
mind the extra work, I apologize.
I just think it'd be interesting to see other categories, and then the board can
The
determine.
big categories that we all have, custodians, bus driver, instructional assistants, easy, but food service. But when you get into the specialist or coordinators, it gets a little bit murky because not every district calls those particular groups the same thing. So that's why teachers are so easy, because a teacher is a teacher, counselor, nurse, librarian, counselor, things like that. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got that, Gabby?
Bye, Mr. Blunt.
Come on, camera ladies, can y'all cut the cameras?
Okay. Dr. Harrell?
Real quick, I think there's a lot of legislative things that we can, if we can ask for. I love the idea that it's in Friday letter instead of board time. So I think that'd be great, and that way then we could do deep dives and figure out who to email or call. So I just wanted to respond to that. But I had a question real quick. When we do comparisons, instead of we saw a slide last year that we were compared to other school districts, and then 2 weeks later, and so we made our decision 2 weeks later. And actually, this is for you. I'm looking at Kelly. Hi, Kelly. But I'm wondering is as we hear school districts form their teacher salary plan, because they're going to be doing it like from now. Some already did, right? I've already heard certain things. So I'm wondering if we could get that in Friday letter too, because it doesn't always make it to the slide, and it can just help us think about that.
I think,
if that's okay, John and Renee.
yeah, we really, I mean, through HR is the one who keeps up with
Ben.
with what's happening, with area districts. I
That'd be
think a
great.
lot of districts right now are really playing it safe because they're thinking,
Yes.
why should I give a raise out of my local dollars when the legislature is going to pass a bill that will
Right.
fund it through the basic allotment
Sure.
increase? So I've not heard, other than, this anecdotal, San Antonio ISD is looking,
Mainly San Antonio ISD, but
yeah,
it also too is good to know if the district is, has teacher allotment or master teacher programs or things like that, because that then is a different source of money that we could at least consider when we're looking at our own teachers. So,
Sure.
Or any staff, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point. I know that in conversations that I've had just recently with other Bexar County superintendents, the big question is just the basic allotment.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen moving through House and/or Senate. We can take a stab at looking at teacher incentive allotment, because we were actually talking about that this morning, I believe, Dr. Jordan, and just we're going to have to start looking at taking that into consideration, because it's competitive compensation for those that are implementing. And then some other benefits, such as recruitment retention stipends. We can try to get to that information as well, because ultimately that does drive individuals' decisions as to districts that they pursue to work in. So
TIA would be a decision on the board that the board would make, so we
Absolutely.
could. Sure.
Incentive.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, and I know health policies are on our agenda as well, but people are starting to make decisions too with districts, what kind of health provider support they would get, and various, packages and things like that when they're making a decision. I mean, teachers have a lot of wiggle room right now, a lot of options, and so I don't know that just one slide's going to really show that, oh, we're here, when we could be here because our health coverage is much more expensive or something like that. I'm just using that as a random example. So I'm wondering if there's something that, I don't know what it is, and I don't like asking for something if I don't have an idea, but if there were 3 things that teachers are looking for, or any employee, it would be health insurance, right? It would be the overall pay. And I'm trying to think if there's one more thing, like professional learning, or a lot of districts are looking at doing half days. Time for teachers to meet and work and organize their stuff because of paperwork being overwhelmed, things like that. So I don't know what that is yet, but I think it's what I'm leading up to. It's bigger than one slide. So I'll work on that. That'll be my homework. But And I'll kind of pretend like I want a job in a district, and what would those, just three things, what would be those top three things that educators or employees look for in a school district? So,
Calendar.
Yeah,
calendar,
we can
Because
definitely
that
work
would
on
include
it.
your
Yeah.
staff, self-development, staff
yeah,
development.
yeah, time to get that work done.
We can definitely work on kind of a cumulative list. There's the quantitative, which is more really the financial aspect,
Yeah.
and then there's also that qualitative
So-
That's true.
piece.
So again, so for maybe future agenda items, recruitment and retention, and maybe bring it
think so.
to committee,
Yeah.
and then, so another agenda and another.
Well, and we can interject some of the work with the DOI plan that will be coming forth on the 25th, in particular with calendar, 4-day week option.
And we've got finance
Hiring early,
next week, right? Don't we have
It's on the
finance next
20th.
week?
20th.
yeah, good.
Of April.
We can go to
Great.
work on it.
Thank you, great teamwork, great teamwork.
Thanks, Kelly. I think
Oh.
that's
Thank
the
you,
end of
ma'am.
it.
Very good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, the biggest cost driver, of course, of any budget usually is going to be whether or not we consider a compensation package.
Yep,
Um,
that's the word I was looking for.
So we, again, we're holding our cards very close to our chest because, again, we don't know what's going to happen with the legislature, whether it's going to be a mandated raise, a pass-through. So that is kind of put off to the side right now as we're putting other things regarding the budget. Mandatory increases like the cost of fuel or electricity or other kinds of things that we are going to package together to share with the superintendent, to share with the board that these are the non-negotiables that we have to include in the budget because we have no control over those costs. But certainly, and then we get to this slide, with the exception of the colors, it's a good slide. I mean, it's yeah, it's, I think we are the pink, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All the colors look the same to me, but that little spike, that's East Central, I believe. So that's what they did last year, where we started together and they decided that they wanted to recruit teachers in that 5 to 15-year range, it looks like. So as we get information regarding what's going to happen next year, we'll certainly update this slide for 23, 24 to see where we fall in with the Joneses. So it's April, and we have a lot of work to do between now and August when the board considers the budget for adoption. Historically, well, within the last 2 years, in April, the board has approved what are called campus-based units. So HR can get busy hiring those additional positions. We're still gathering all that data to share with the superintendent to see whether or not that is something that we will bring to the board for consideration. And then in June, historically, again, the board has approved the compensation package. I'm not hopeful that anything will be able to be done that quickly, given that the legislature be finishing in late May. And in my experience, and certainly Ms. Rosty's, that sometimes at the end of May, people are still trying to decipher what was passed and what does this mean. I mean, there are handwritten notes on the side of the bills, and we have a lot of people we work with who are trying to decipher all of that. So what does it really mean for us? So like any legislative year, there's a lot of unknowns right now. And I know that other school districts sometimes do, where they go out on a limb and say, we're going to give X percent raise, and they beat everybody to the punch. They never tell you how they're going to pay for it, but they just go ahead and, they do it. So, but again, we are going to be looking at that with all the people that I work with that are looking at this information to try to make the best decisions to bring to the superintendent and then for the board for consideration as we move forward. Luckily, we are a district that has a September to August fiscal year. Those districts that have a June 30th fiscal year end, it's a tough position to be in when you're trying to pass a budget. You don't know what compression is going to be. It's a nice, safe spot to be when you have all the summer into August to package the budget together so we can have the best information to present to the board like we have over the last couple of years so we can make good decisions and present the right information to the board for the adoption of this next year's budget.
Okay. Ms. Chumley, did you have another comment?
I did. So, and I think when we were interviewing with you and we discussed budget, we had talked about a balanced budget. And Renee, thank you. When you and I had gone through that real intense kind of trying to understand challenges with the balanced budget, it was that our revenue is kind of flexible and we really don't have, there's so many things that have to occur for us to have a set revenue that we know, like what is the ADA, what is the attendance, all of those things. But we had talked about that we don't want to continue to have deficit spending. So what do we do? And I know it's not something that we can correct next year, but how do we change the budget? How do we work on the budget over the course of, say, the next 4 years, the next 5 years, to say that we want to get to a budget that is more balanced and that we don't have such a large deficit? And because what's happening too is when we hold so much in our ending fund balance, then it gives an appearance to people that don't quite understand how we do our budget, that we're just sitting on this excess money instead of using it, say, for salaries, but salaries are recurring costs, so you can't just pull it out of your savings account. So I guess what I am interested in just knowing is knowing all the variables that make a school district's budget and the school funding. Is there something, though, that the board could look at over the course of the next 4 years, the next 5 years, to get us where we have much less of a deficit spending in our budget? Is that possible?
Without a doubt, I think we have to reach a new equilibrium. A district that has been growing for a number of years, not just Northside, any district, it usually takes 2 to 3 years for them to say, oh wow, we're not growing anymore. We have to kind of change how we operate. The method of delivery and instruction, for instance, has to change because the revenues aren't there to cover it. So I think that this year, along with the next year, or this next upcoming biennium, if we don't see the increase in enrollment that this district has experienced over the last 10 years, there's going to be a new equilibrium, and we have to hit that. So again, we're going to have to go through and look at how we operate and get in line with essentially living within our means. And for a number of years, because the district was growing, that wasn't the priority. It didn't have to be because we were opening so many campuses, and things are not that way anymore. So I think that over the next 2 years, that we have to reach that new equilibrium. And if you don't, then Ms. Rosti alluded to it, a TRE. If you want additional pennies, go ask the voters, then that would be a way to increase revenue. That's a whole other issue that we can talk about down the road. But for now, I think we have to reach that new equilibrium. So we are not passing deficit budgets. Now, passing a deficit budget is not a bad thing if the revenues are all built on very conservative estimates. And it's kind of a wink, wink. We're actually going to come in a little bit better than that, and expenses aren't going to be that high. So at the end of the day, the swing between a deficit budget of, say, $10 million and the results of operations is a positive 10 is not that bad, considering that we're almost $1 billion, and a 1 or 2% or 1.5% swing either way is pretty good if you're that good. But to the general public, it looks like, wow, I can't believe that there's a $20 million swing. Yes, we're talking about the largeness of the numbers, but if you look at it from a percentage basis, wow, we really hit the target. So I think that's what we're going to have to be going through the next couple of years, is to regroup and reset how Northside operates from an instructional perspective and to live within our means, because if the kids don't come back, the revenues aren't going to be there.
Well, and I think we need to get there. I think because the other piece of it is it's a real PR piece, because it's hard to really explain to our constituents, to our taxpayers, and sometimes it's viewed. I think 10 million. I think would be very reasonable, and you could really explain that. When you have the large debt, and then we find it throughout the year, then it looks like, well, that we weren't using our money in the manner that perhaps some of our public thinks that we should be doing with that, particularly like teacher salaries.
Right.
And so I just think that that's really something that the board needs to start heading towards. And I know we'll never be exactly a balanced budget, but we've got to get a whole lot closer. And I remember, Renee, when I first got on the board, and we would have the end of year sweep, and it would be huge, huge. And that then was taken care of with the change of superintendents. But it really helped because that was a really poor appearance that we had such a huge end-of-year sweep. And then I had met with Renee because I had been asked about that we were not allowing monies for purchases. And what I found out was that really wasn't the case, and I really had appreciated Renee's explanation. And I think when there is time, that explanation would be beneficial to the full board. And
Could you remind me what I said?
Renee, it was
I do, I'm just kidding.
yes, but it was really beneficial. But what it is it's more a culture change, because everyone wants to keep that money in their account and then ask for more money when they have to, yet the money they have would pay and they'd still have some left. But we're so used to wanting to make sure that we have that, that buffer within our budgets. So that's a culture change that we have to get used to. But part of that, though, is when we're asking, I don't want to pick on athletics, but let's say we ask athletics to spend some of the monies that they have to purchase something, and they're looking like, well, I may not have enough money for the end of the year. We need to make sure that the culture we are creating says, yes, you will. If you run short, we're gonna give you that money. We're not gonna have you go without helmets or, whatever. That we'll be able to do that, and we'll be able to do it within a very easy process. That's not hat in hand having to ask for funds for things that our kids need. So I just think that that's part of this whole discussion that we need to look at when we're trying to get to that balanced budget, or as close to that as we can. But I do think it's a goal that we really need to shoot for.
The only thing I was going to add, Dr. Barras hit the nail right on the head. Usually working towards a balanced budget, in my experiences, has been really a combination of two things. One, increasing revenue, which hopefully through this legislative process this year, maybe some other various sources of additional revenue, i.e. increase in ADA, but then also a reduction in expenditures. And looking at that equilibrium, as Renee articulated, it is likely going to have to be a combination of the two, which will involve some hard decisions that we'll have to work through, like I say, to get closer to that balanced budget approach. So we will start working, Renee and I've already started having the conversations, we'll start working on various options to bring forward to the board to work to accomplish that objective.
I just remember we had come to talk in the board meeting, and we had said, well, school district said they can have balanced budgets. We've been told that these districts can, and they do work on balanced budgets. And Renee was like, if they're telling you that, then they're not telling you the truth on it. Anyway, it was a learning. It was learning for us as well, too.
Dr.
Thank you.
Harrell? Dr. Harrell, did you have a question or? Okay. And Mr. Lopez?
I'm sorry, I touched that button again.
Okay,
So
that's
you're
all
not
right.
the only one that's making mistakes. I am too. It's been a while. No, thank you, Renee, for the explanation. And Melissa, to touch on what you're talking about, I think that's I think that's something, like you said too as well, Dr. Kraft, is it something that we're going to have to look at for future budgets? Because we've got to look at, making sure that we can continue to fund the programs for kids, right? So that should be priority one, right? And I like that idea to be able to look at that and say, okay, where can we cut back a little bit? Where can we manage our cost? And I think those are good things to have. And anytime we can do that, I think the public will be appreciative of that. So I like that. Thank you so much for making that recommendation. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on the item? Okay, next item on the agenda is insurance options under HR.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, we wanted to bring this item back. I had asked McGriff and, of course, John Bass and Ben Muir to take a little bit closer look, i.e. a 5-year look back in regards to potentially moving towards a recommendation being presented for a self-funded insurance plan. And so really the two major cost drivers, kind of having experienced the migration to a self-funded insurance plan, in my experience, has been the annual loss ratio, which you're all familiar with, and they've run that analysis, and then also the major claims. Again, our objective in looking at migrating towards a self-funded insurance plan, and forgive me, I'm being caught up to speed really quickly, being day 6, I believe, on the job. Is obviously to try to maintain premiums, keep flat premiums without an interruption in service. And so I think that in this 5-year look back, it will help paint the picture that makes economic sense in a future recommendation. So with that being said, I'll turn the presentation over to Letty.
Thank you, and we appreciate you having us, Dr. Kraft, and we're hoping to catch you up because I know that we met with the board several times, and so, and I appreciate the ask of going back 5 years so that way the data is a little bit richer and the confidence is there. So I will turn this over to Mr. Bass, and he will start with the presentation.
Thank you, Letty. Mr. Bass was my father. Ms. Freeman, Dr. Kraft, welcome, Dr. Kraft, to Northside. What you have in front of you, if we can go to the next slide, is a 5-year look back of the premium and claims that the district has paid and incurred on the current program. We had to dig a little bit to go find the actual premium for 2018. We couldn't get it by month, but we did get it in a total. So my apologies for that. Usually a carrier will not have that information beyond a rolling 36 months or 3 years. So we did it as quick as we could, but the numbers are accurate. And you can see as you sort of look in the bottom third under total net claims per employee per month, or PEPM, it shows a relatively stable amount of incurred claims. There's been some fluctuations up. You could see in 2021, coming out of COVID, claims actually decreased by 3.5%. I'll have another comment on that in just a moment. Things spiked a little bit more in 22, not uncommon. Things are opening up, surgeries are getting scheduled. That's, in our estimation, that's relatively natural. We're seeing that across our client, across the board. But bottom line is, it continues with my comments several weeks ago, and that is the stability of the district remains intact. And that's key. That's key when you're considering potentially a funding change. If you go to the next slide, one of the things I did mention a number of weeks ago was when you're in a fully insured environment, the medical carrier is projecting future claims, and they're using their best guess to set future claims, and those claims result into the projection into the premium rates. But you can see that over the last 5 years, the district's annual trend rate has run below the national average for every year. And on average, national trend has bounced around between 8 and 10%. That's sort of the national trend rate. The district's average trend rate is 4.6%. So that's just the cost inflation of the claims. Lots of things drive trend, utilization, cost of services, but it is below the national average.
Ms. Chumley?
Yes, can you go back to
Yes,
the
ma'am.
first page? Okay, because I'm looking at these numbers and I really need you to tell me what exactly should I be looking at to understand exactly what you're saying. And so when I looked, I said gross claims was 70 million, premiums was 85 million. So, but our loss ratio is 82%. So just, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be looking at from these numbers. So can you just explain where are you telling me this is a good thing?
Sure.
On
I
it.
think a slide, possibly a little bit further down might be helpful, but regardless. As a plan sponsor, obviously your claims are part of your fully insured premium, and from a carrier's perspective, they want you to run less than 100%, right? If they take in $1, they want to pay less than $1 in claims. The amount, the differential, if you will vary by the size of the group. It will vary by the industry. It'll vary by the demographics of the group. But I think what we're trying to show in this slide, if you look at 2018 and compare premium versus claims, 2019 you compare premium versus claims, 2020 premium versus claims, 21 premium versus claims, and then 22 same scenario, you can see over that period of time that the differential is relatively, one, stable, and two, large. Right?
Right, and that's where, because you had said in previous discussions that in looking at if we just kept everything as it is, if we offered exactly the same plans that we have now, but on a self-funded program, that we would see savings. And so in my simple math on this, that's what we're looking at, is the premium that our members, our employees, have paid to United Healthcare versus what United Healthcare has had to pay out in relation to claims. The difference is the savings that we're talking about. I know that's very basic,
but the concept is accurate. The concept is accurate,
Okay.
and this 5-year look back was something Dr. Kraft had asked for, I think, to show a visual to say, how has the plan run compared to the premiums paid. And I think the visual shows that, one, the plan remains very stable. Number two, the differential, as you say, Ms. Chumley, between premium and claims is very stable as well. And we've talked about, underwriting margin, the differential after a carrier would account for expenses and profit and margin is significant. And this is really what this chart is designed to show. It's a proof point for the characteristics of a plan sponsor who is considering moving to a self-funded plan.
And that we're very stable with what our employees. Okay.
Correct.
I thought that's what it was, but I want to make sure.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
And John, if I may, just a second. I wanted to really look back to see were the savings really there.
Well, this was good, John.
It is good. It's positive, and it kind of led to other questions, and we'll talk about demographics of our subscribers here momentarily. But I do think, confidently speaking, that you can see with premiums paid versus the claim history that there is absolutely savings to be garnered.
I'm glad you asked for this.
So the next visual really is to sort of build on that concept, and the rating methodology in a renewal always projects claims based on a trend. What's the average medical inflation? That's what trend is called, medical inflation, right? What is it? Has it been over the past several years? Northside, as the previous chart suggests, continues to run below the national average of medical trend, and there's lots of reasons for that that we can opine on. Good demographics, well-run plan, strong provider contracts, provider network, innovations in your plan design. You've got a very well built out wellness program for employees. There's lots of reasons for that. But consistently, the district is running below the projected trend number. And that's a positive. And you can see that in 21 and in 22, that differential became even larger. And as I mentioned, the national average for 2023 is 9.7%, which is a combination of medical trend as well as pharmacy trend, or medical inflation and pharmacy inflation. So if we go to the next slide, really this is sort of a summary of what we've just discussed, right? So cumulatively, you can see that the first bullet, the district has paid $443 million in premium compared to $368 million in incurred claims. And it's an average loss ratio of 83%, which the delta, the differential, is significant, even if you account for traditional margin and administrative costs, etc. It's still a significant differential. As I mentioned, the district's enrollment has been relatively stable. The size of the population of 9,500 employees on the plan, sometimes close to 10,000, 18,000 or so individual belly buttons. The law of large numbers would suggest that the plan is credible, it's predictable, year over year over year. And in fact, the current carrier, United Healthcare, reconfirms this every year in their methodology and their rating. They will not use any additional manual or any other prior period to perform their rating. So we would concur with that, especially when you have this much information to look at. We would also suggest that the district's experience is credible, which means it's predictable year over year over year. Dr. Kraft asked us to go a little deeper into the number of large claims, which also can affect a plan's experience. And so we went back and looked at large claims for the past 3 years where we had really good data. And you can see we bucketed those large claims at a threshold of $250,000 and a threshold of $500,000. So the fourth bullet suggests in 2020 there were 13 large claims over $250,000, 12 in 2021, and 9 in 2022. And then when you look at it on a larger amount, 500,000, which by the way is the actual pooling level or stop loss level that United Healthcare uses today, and McGriff would probably recommend that would be a stop loss level the district might consider for self-funding. You can see that the number of claims, large claims exceeding that in 2020 were 5, in 21 4, and in 22 0. You did not have a large claim over $500,000 in 2022. And in addition, if you look at the 2020 cycle, and you can see what happened in 2020, there was a very large claim the district incurred. It was $1.8 million. But yet, in the 2020 plan year, your claim costs in aggregate dropped 3.5%. So I think what this tells us is that, again, predictability of risk is something I think the district can approach with confidence. The risk, the health risk of your population is slightly better than average. So when we do our analytics using our data warehouse, the risk profile of the district is at or slightly better than an educational cohort. So your peer groups that have similar demographics, etc. So the data suggests that you're slightly healthier than average. Your large claim information sort of confirms this, right? That doesn't mean that the district does not have, you know, the normal disease states that are driving your claims, cancer, cardiac, and so on. Yes, absolutely. That's America. But with respect to the district's population, you have a good risk. And I forget the average age. What was the average age? 43 is your average age of your population. And I think of adults, it's, on all members, it's 32. So for a public school system, I think 43 is probably slightly below average. I mean, some public entities that are much more mature, they're not growing. You know, we've seen average ages 45, 47, and just the law of sort of that will and the health risk profiles of an individual as we get older deteriorate, unfortunately. So that's also a reason the district, you know, continues to perform well.
Do we know how that average age has trended over the last 5 years? Do you have that?
I don't have that. I don't have a number for you. We can certainly try to get it from that. My suspect would be relatively stable. I don't think it's been significantly greater. It might have trended up slightly, but
I just remember when we've talked about health insurance in the past, we've talked about the fact that we've had in general, our average age was higher than some other districts, and that pertained to our retention rate at the time. I'd just be curious to know. What
we can
that's
get that
looked
for you. We'll provide that. And down at the bottom, we've just simply tried to show a running total cumulative amount of the variance between premium versus claim. So you can see what that differential is in over a 5-year period, over $75 million. The next slide is really the specific dollar amounts of large claims, you know, exceeding $250,000 for the year. If you go to the next slide. You can see the dollar amounts that were there in 22, 21, and 20. You can see in 21 the one claim of $1.8 million. So those are the large claims for those years. And then today we have no high cost claimants over $250,000. Relatively new year. But we would expect, I think I mentioned when I was here last time, a population of yours, we would expect five claims over $500,000. That's what the actuarial model would suggest, 5 claims over $500,000. But again, our belief is because of the way the plans are built, the way your current provider is performing, the incentives that employees have to stay healthy. As I mentioned, you have a very robust and well-designed wellness program, which is sometimes we don't see dividends. We can't see what's happening, but I think you can look internally in the numbers and you can see the money has been well spent for the dollars associated with the wellness program. It's contributing to keeping the plan performing well. The next, yes, sir.
So real quick, you know, when you're talking about the programs that within our plan, and you're talking about how we're able to save money, and you're talking about our wellness program, just so that everybody understands what that is, can you explain a little bit more about the wellness program and what that is, and how that saves the district, right?
I'm going
As
to
an
defer to
example,
Letty
right?
on that.
So the wellness program, that's the one where Rita Peterson is my coordinator. So that's the biometric screenings that we provide for the employees from the beginning of the school year through about April.
Right.
It's the shots, trying to think, it's the rally that also comes with UHC, where it gives an employee up to $200 based on, you know, whatever activities they complete.
Right, okay.
And then she provides a lot of educational information. There's that Thursday wellness letter that goes out to all of our employees.
What to eat, things like that, is that what you're talking about as well?
Yes.
Like those type programs?
Yes. And
those-
so,
yeah.
right now, her newsletter focuses on the financial, the emotional, physical, and mental health.
Right.
So that goes out to all the employees, and again, it touches on, of those 4 areas, if employees are looking for some information or some help.
Right, right. Which all helps her, right? It's all to benefit them,
absolutely.
and it helps us at the end.
Well,
right?
we try to be proactive, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and
avoid
I
these.
just wanted to touch on that because I think that's important as well, right? Is the health of our employees and making sure, hey, it's okay, we gained a couple of pounds, but hey, you know what? There's a NEF run coming up, and we got to promote that, and let's go out there and walk a little, right?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think those are great things, right? So, no, I like
Yes.
that, and it's good to see that. So,
Yes.
just wanted to ask a little bit about that. So, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate
Yes.
it, Letty. Thank you, Madam President.
If you go to the next slide, I think there's a question maybe by Trustee Blunt last time regarding reserves. And so it's not an actuarial attestation here, but we did do what we call a claim lag method for medical claims only. There's really no lag in a pharmacy claim because once a claim is paid right there at the pharmacy, it's literally processed and, dollars are exchanged pretty much overnight, at least in theory. So this is medical only, and the lag method shows a incurred but not reported or a deferred liability that the district would need to recognize, based on information through December 22 of $7.2 million, which I think is a reasonable amount, maybe appropriate and less than maybe what the district has already potentially budgeted. So that number will fluctuate. Reserves will fluctuate based on size of a group, claim experience, etc. But the reserve amount certainly we think is predictable. The last couple of slides are just simply snapshots of the current plans, contribution amounts for the employer, which would be Northside, and the employee. I don't know if I can speak to this because these are the programs, these are the plans that have been in place for a while. Certainly the contribution split have been in existence. I simply will just make one comment and might defer to Letty on any specifics. As a self-funded plan sponsor, the beauty of that type of approach is you have more control over your plan design. You have more control over your contribution methodologies, more control over helping employees migrate maybe to the plan that suits them better, etc. That's something that we would certainly look at if the district wants us to look at in terms of the contribution formula. But we wanted to make available to the trustees here the current programs and the current plans for the population. Happy to take any other questions or defer to Letty.
Ms. Chumley?
I wanted to thank Letty thank you for
My
your
pleasure.
presentation, but I wanted to thank Letty. I spent some time with her today understanding this piece of it, the contribution piece. Because what has always been confusing is we would look at employee only, yet then when we would talk to employees, they said, well, I'm paying $900 a month, I'm paying $1,200 a month, and I could never figure out where that came from. So Letty, thank you, and John, you as well, for making sure that this was included in here. And I'll just ask something though, because, well, there's a couple of things, but I never really quite understood, though I had a feeling that that was what it was. So when you look at, to me, the preferred plans, which would be the PPO 2000 or the Primary Advantage 3000, though Letty and Carlos were able to help explain some of this today about how actually the Primary Advantage, depending upon the health of your family, really was maybe the better one, the richer plan than the first one. But what concerned me is that when you look at the contribution, the percentage of the contribution that we make, it's 44%. Yet when you look at the other plans, it's higher, which led me to the concern that our contribution drives employees to look at the other plans. And I'm not sure how comfortable I am with that, because if the, say the PPO 2000 was the better plan for some of our families, yet we pay less because we want them to take a plan that's more cost effective to us. I don't know, I'm concerned about that and want us to just all be aware of that. And that's probably because, and you can probably tell me, that's probably something that just is in the insurance industry, the health insurance industry, and probably any company, when you look at the contribution that they pay, use that to drive employees. But I'll give you an example, because the people I'm really worried about most, I'm worried about all of us, but the ones I'm really worried about are those that can afford health insurance the least. And so say the percentage that we pay drives an employee to take, say, an employee-only HD HP 4000 Nexus policy, which is $25.80. So in the discussion that I had with Letty, it was, well, because what you want to do is you want to encourage that employee to take that additional monies that they have because they're paying this least premium and put it into an HSA account. Well, the problem with that is that a lot of our employees are living paycheck to paycheck, and they don't understand the benefit of putting that money into an HSA. So in my mind, one of the advantages of a self-funded plan, and it may not be that it's the first year out, but it certainly and absolutely should be in the second year out, is that we look at that, and we look at, you know, the ability for us to change our plan. It just made me unhappy to realize that we do that within this, though that's not really a criticism, because I bet every other company, you know, does that as well, but it just concerned me. And then the other piece is, recently had a friend go through an experience with us where, and I'll use my company as an example. When I retired, I had health insurance with my company. And when I turned 65 and was able to qualify for Medicare, my insurance immediately went to a supplement. So I had lower costs with Medicare, and then I had this supplement lower costs. So I ended up paying less for my insurance than what I was prior to being 65. Well, we don't do that. So if our employees don't find out about those changes that they have to do within a timely period, they could turn 65, be eligible to pay a lower Medicare cost, but if they don't understand it, they don't get the right guidance, they're stuck paying that $900 a month. And I use this as an example because we had an employee that happened with, and the only way for her to get out from under a $900 a month charge was she quit. And she's one of our bus drivers. Her last day is Thursday, because the guidance just didn't happen. And I'm sure that there was lots of miscommunication. But bottom line, it didn't happen. We've lost a bus driver because we don't have that within our health program. So I bring that up because one of the things that I want us to look at, and I won't be here to do that, but I sure ask you all to do this, is look at how do we change, and I recognize the first year we probably won't be able to do a lot on changing, but we need to look in the next year, if it's a self-funded program, what other things can we do within this self-funded program to help our employees? And then the other thing is, I really think if we make this change, and I think that everything y'all have done, and Letty, thank you so much for the discussion today, really helped a lot for me to understand this, is that we really have to say that what is driving us is to be able to give the credit that we get in this directly back to our employees. That this is not for us to add whatever million into our general operating fund. It's to say that this is going to be a carry through, that savings goes directly to our employees, particularly the most needy of our employees, to be able to help offset their cost or educate them that maybe in this instance they can get a better plan, or really can understand how that savings can go into an HSA account to help when those, when those incidents or those tragedies occur, or those sickness occur. I just really want us to look at it in that manner, because I think there's some changes that we can make that will from a plan perspective, that will benefit our employees.
So and I would invite or all of you actually to come out. So during the month of October, for the first 3 weeks, actually this year we're going to do it for the 4 weeks of October, that we have open enrollment. And, to your point, Ms. Chumley, and I do appreciate the time that you spent with us today. So thank you for that. We have every single vendor that we have is at our open enrollment. We also have Proficient, which is our carrier for the FSAs. We have Optum, which is a branch of UHC, which provides the HSA. But the open enrollment, that's for, how we said, our most vulnerable population. They don't have a computer, or they don't know how to work a computer. So that's why we have those enrollers there to sit with them. We also have, to help them enroll, but we also have UHC there too. And then we have an on-site rep that sits, and he's there all the time, right? So that if we have an employee who has a question about switching their plans, either going up or coming down, depending on their need, we're available, right? And so that's what we're trying to do every time that we're out there for those 3 weeks. This year it'll be 4 weeks, to say that if you have any questions, we last year at convocation, we did push the FSA and the HSA, because we were, that was a conversation with Dr. Woods, that he wanted to see an uptick with those savings plans. So we're just going to continue to educate our employees about what is available with benefits. So,
Ms. Saldana?
Letty,
yes, ma'am.
it's been a long time since I've seen a chart like this, and I'm looking at the previous page, not the one that's up there right now, but the previous one. Okay, the 958. I'm assuming that means that we have 958 employees under that one.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what's the next column? The 743.
That's the total, the premium, the total premium.
That's the premium.
Yes.
The next column, what is EE?
That's the employee contribution?
So EE just is employee?
Yes.
Okay. And ER?
It's the district contribution.
Okay, so this is district. And the ER percent, that means that Northside is paying 62% of the premium?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And the total annual cost down at the bottom of the 1325. Does that mean that the district is paying $7.6 million for insurance?
For those
For
plans.
those 1,325 employees.
Correct.
And 20.6 million for the 2997, and 22.3 million for the 3240.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Finished, Dr. Kraft? Is
Well,
that the end of the presentation on that?
I believe so, unless there are any other questions. Like I say, we are intending to bring this item back on the 25th. Go ahead, Letty.
So the plan is that on April the 25th, so in 2 weeks, we will bring the winner of the insurance, health insurance that we have chosen, because we've already had our committee meetings, and then also for the approval for self-funding.
My feel is that there are definite savings to be, like I say, garnered. Again, I appreciate the team for doing a deeper analysis that helped my comfort level. I do think that there are potential future savings that can be passed on to employees through plan design and premiums. We were discussing it earlier this morning. As far as the employer contribution percentages and rates, that's something we can definitely take a look at. Renee and I both discussed just a flat rate is what I'm pretty accustomed to, but again, that can be further conversation because I know that's been in place and embedded in the plan for quite some time. Not to say that this is, like I say, a bad or wrong design, but I do think that there are potential $9 to $10 million annual savings that can be, again, passed on to our employees and can help families. And again, I think that the 5-year look back really helps solidify just how we've been performing from an overall health insurance cost. So I feel pretty positive.
Mr. Lopez?
Letty, thank you very much, and I appreciate all the hard work on this, and and I appreciate the board members also as well as looking at this and looking and wanting to do more for our employees through this perspective, right? So, my not congratulations, just, thank you for the hard work too, John, and Ben as well, and putting up with us and our tough questions and things like that, because this is what's needed. At the end of the day, John, and it's like you said, this is about giving back to our employees. This is about showing them how much we appreciate them and how we can do things like this to show that we appreciate them, we realize it. And this was never more evident during COVID, right? Because there was a lot of employees that were afraid to come back to work because they were afraid to go to the hospital, right? They were afraid to run into those type things. So because we knew that going to the hospital was a financial it would destroy them financially. Sure. So these were great things. These are great things. And Melissa, thank you for asking the hard questions. And I really appreciate this, and I look forward to this. One more question as well. When we looked at looking at our plan, are we going to have a third-party administrator? Are we going to contract with that?
So if we get the approval to go self-funding, then we'll do an RFP for the TPA.
Good,
yes.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate
So
it.
I just want to let you guys know that this is a conversation actually Ben and I had for recruiting, that once everything is said and done, that we want to put that on a flyer to say that these are the benefits because there's a lot more benefits that are coming out of the benefits department besides healthcare. But, Ben and I are going to work on a flyer to make Northside the premier district. So, yes, that's coming.
I do have a question
Yes,
before you leave. So we've talked about the employer contribution, whether we have some sort of mix as to where we have it now, or more of a flat percentage per plan. I just wonder if this is structured, or philosophy of structuring this the way it is, in that the lesser expensive or the lesser cost to the employee perhaps might be those who are maybe their wages aren't as high as everyone else. And so maybe that's why we tend to contribute more to that particular plan than to the other plans, because the other ones are more richer. Yes, thank you for that. I just wonder if that's, and so when we talk about that, I'd like to think about that when we speak to the where we go with the employer contribution, because I'd like to be able to help out those that truly their wages aren't as high as some others.
I think that's an excellent point. Ms. Freeman. That's something that we need to look to probably recalibrate to ensure that that design is still having that exact impact.
Right.
Which we'll have in a further conversation and analysis.
Okay, sorry. Okay. All right. Any more questions while we're?
Karen, I just had one. So the question on, I still kind of feel like the cart's in front of the horse because we don't know who the person is that's going to be doing this, but we're feeling pretty confident that they're going to be able to mimic our plans at or less than what our employees pay now. Because I know that with United Healthcare, we had said if we stayed on a funded, fully funded plan, that we were going to have an X% increase in what our premiums were going to be. I thought it was around an 8, maybe I'm not. Anyway, but we said that so I'll tell you, because Letty, what I'm going to be very disappointed at is at my very last board meeting, that we come in and y'all have said, okay, look at all of this extra money that we've said we were going to have, but now that we have this person that we've hired or that we're wanting, it's going to be a 12% increase for what our employees would have been paying. That would be very disappointing.
I'll make sure that doesn't happen.
No pressure, Letty.
No pressure on you, Letty.
No,
But I
I
mean,
promise.
but
No, we won't do
that's
that.
the thing that's always concerned me on this, though, is that we don't know who the provider's going to be or what they're going to look at an equal plan like this. So we're going to approve something that we really don't yet know what it's going to cost us and how much of an increase are we going to be looking at in premiums that we would have had we stayed on a fully funded one.
Well, yeah, that's an excellent point, and I think that that's going to be a follow-on piece to this conversation. Go ahead, Letty.
And actually, I think that we can answer that, but we have to wait, right? I can answer that it'll be your last one in 2 weeks?
Yes.
Okay, so I will
Yes.
have an answer for you, I promise.
But I do want to go back to
Great.
our overall objective is to try to maintain flat premiums, particularly in a day and age time when health insurance premiums are increasing across the board. The industry is seeing significant increases, but as important, I think it's also imperative to try to limit disruption of services, i.e. primary care physicians, benefits, formulary, as much as possible. Because that's also as painful. So those are our really two objectives with looking at the future health plan.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Thank you. So that concludes this part of the open session that we have. Board of Trustees on April 11th, 2023, beginning at, let's take a 5-minute break. At 8:55, we'll convene in closed meeting in accordance with Texas Government Code Section 551.071 to 551.084. And we'll meet in Dr. Kraft's office. The Board of Trustees on April 11th, 2023, beginning at 8:28 p.m. will convene an open meeting. There are no items to take action on, so if there are no objections, this board is adjourned at 8:29 p.m. on April 11th, 2023.